Hello, welcome back. Today it's all about monsters. We work our way through the monster manual, and I have decided that a monster that is not a very good monster needs some attention. We're going to talk about the GRICK today. We're going to deal with the GRICK. It is one of those monsters that really doesn't really do anything. Well, does it do anything really much at all? Does it do a lot? No, it doesn't. Anyway, I'm going to put up a poll. Feel free to take part in that poll. I would suggest grabbing some food, some drink, making sure you are comfortable, and we'll get into this and cover this in a little bit of detail. I will show you and break down some of the maths for it. Okay, so let's get started because yeah, we've got lots to do, and there's never enough time. Hi, welcome to How to RPG. My name is Fred Weller, and today I want to talk about tabletop role-playing games, specifically Dungeons & Dragons 5e and the Monster Manual, the 5e Monster Manual. We're going to look at the GRICK. We're going to fix or remaster the stat block for the GRICK monster. And the problem with the GRICK is it's a really, really boring monster in 5e. It is not the best monster out there. I mean, it looks interesting, but in terms of what it doesn't do an awful lot. And I've always found it hard to make that monster feel anything but kind of like a waste of your time. And it's primarily around the design of the creature. And you have to understand a little bit about how the monster is designed, because unfortunately, I don't think an awful lot of thought was put into this. If you look at the lore and break down the lore, I always say, look at the lore, look at the story of the monster, and then make your maths to fit that part of the, of the stat block. Look at the story of the monster, look at the lore, see how it operates, go from there. And there's actually some things missing from the existing stat block that probably should have been included. So I'm going to go through this today, show you how it's done, and you're going to give me some feedback. But before I start working through my document, which I have pre-prepared, I have done some work in advance, not all of it, but some of it, I would just like to ask you a question. How would you fix the GRICK? Like, if you were going to fix the GRICK, what would you do? Hello, Negative Space, how are you doing? And Fred Huber. Fred Huber is a patron. And yes, it is a minor monster. Yes, you should probably be using more than one, but it depends on what level you are to. So hashtag, what changes would you make to the GRICK stat block? Okay, that is my question. If we're dealing with 5e, what would you do to it in some way? So, now that we've got that going, let's go over to my document, which is ready to go. Here it is. The GRICK. Okay. What's the date today? It is the 2nd of October for me, not the 1st. I am in the future. Okay, GRICK. Medium, monstrosity, neutral, cool, all that. Let's have a look at its armor class. Its armor class, if I take something like the Dungeon Master Guide, which is, there's a table in here, it's not super accurate, so we would have to do some changes to make it work. But if we do take this particular Dungeon Master Guide and we look at page 274, there's a table called the Monster Stat Block by Challenge Rating. It's a quick build, and we look at Challenge Rating 2, which is what this monster is. So we're not going to change the challenge rating. We're not going to change the proficiency bonus, which should be a +2. This is what the players will have. If it's a challenge rating 2 monster, it means that really characters of level 2 and upward should be facing this monster. If you are level 1, you're probably going to have a bit of trouble with this monster. Particularly because 1, you're level 1, but 2, because you are lower than the level of the monster. That's really how things should work, right? Well, let's have a look at what our armor class would normally be on this table. Challenge rating 2 says a 13. This is a 14. So it's got some natural armor. You can see it's got a dexterity of +2. So there's 10 plus 2 makes 12, and then 13. But we're gonna leave it at 14 because that's what the original monster was. And going 1 point above or below is usually not an issue. Okay. Particularly for monsters who don't normally have a particularly good armor class compared to the player characters, which makes them easier to hit. That's all right. It's just about how long we want them to last in the battle now. Okay, so we'll go 14. That's not going to be a big issue at all, whether it's a 14 or a 13. I don't think it's really going to matter that much, but 14, let's leave it there. Okay, I'm happy with that. Next, how many hit points should it have? Well, its average is 27. So we've got 6d8s because there's no con modifier. I'm not going to bother changing any of the ability scores here. I just don't see that there's any point. You would be just making changing numbers for the sake of changing numbers. But the timer for a monster like that means that 27 hit points, usually this creature or monster is dead if there's a critical hit on it. 27 hit points is probably it's dead. Okay, that's one character. If 2 characters attack it, it's probably dead. If we use maximum hit points of 48, we might get through one complete round before it's dead. That's really how I see this monster working, is if you do it that way, you're roughly looking at that outcome. So that is a timer is not very good, because that means there's a good chance, if you're using average damage, that not everybody will get a chance to actually fight the monster before it's toast. Okay? And that's just one monster. This is not a solo monster. GRICK wouldn't be a solo monster. This is a pack animal. Okay, it's a pack creature, pack monster, fights with others, might fight alone, but that would be kind of unusual, right? It would probably fight with another GRICK, right? So that means we're only going to get about 2 rounds. If we were to double it, if we literally double it, we might get ourselves to 2 rounds. If I double the maximum hit points, and we're closer to 100 hit points, that's the maximum, not the average. Consider that. Now, so it says here in the Dungeon Master Guide, challenge rating 2 should be about between 86 and 100 hit points. That's how many hit points it probably should have. That's a timer. That's all it is, right? And I would say that's about 2 rounds of a battle at level 2. Well, it's nowhere near that, as you can see. It has a climb speed and a walking speed, which is all fine. I don't think we need to mess with that at all. But we definitely need to do something about this damage, the damage it can take, because it doesn't have a chance. It's just going to be a really boring fight, okay? If it even gets to take a turn. There's going to be plenty of players who have a better dexterity or intelligence bonus, not intelligence, initiative bonus than a +2. Mathematically, against 4 or 5 other characters, the GRICK might be well going last. It's supposed to be an ambush monster too. I mean, think about that. It's actually a monster that's supposed to ambush you. Okay, so if we take 6d8, now the average would be 3.5, and we multiply that by 8. We get our average, which is, it's actually supposed to be 28, not 27. So it's actually a little bit lower. So if they miscalculated that, oh no, I've got it's a D8, so it's D8 is average is 4.5, isn't it? 4.5. 6d8, 4.5, multiplied that by 6 is 27. Okay, so that's just me. I did my maths wrong. Okay, so let's consider that if we have 8 and multiply that by 6, we get our maximum 48. We need to get closer to 100. We definitely need to push it up so that we get at least 2 rounds of battle before it's over. So it's got time to do something, okay? All right, so how do we do that? I think we just double the dice. If we go 12, have 12 8-sided dice and multiply that by 8, will get us 96. That's kind of in between the 80 and 100 range, which is where we need it to be. So I think that is a clear solution to it. So let's go 12. So we're literally doubling the number of hit dice that it has, people. Okay, literally doubling it. So I would say 96 is a better number, myself. But it also depends on how skilled your group is. So 96. So our average for this would be 4.5. That's the average of 8. Multiplied by 12 comes to 54. So between 54 and 96. Whoops, 54 and 96. That is how many hit points I think the GRICK probably needs to have. It's got way too few hit points for what it's trying to do. It's way underpowered. Okay, going down. Do we need to give this thing a saving throw? It's got some minuses here. Charisma, intelligence. Intelligence is not a common saving throw it would have to contend with. Charisma, not that common a saving throw. It's got a +2 to wisdom, a +2 to dex and to strength, and nothing for con. So Its weakness is in areas where you're usually not having to deal with that anyway, so that's not such a big deal. I would suggest to you that adding a saving throw probably isn't absolutely necessary, and if we did so, just adding them to the int and the charisma would just make the minuses smaller minuses rather than such big minuses. If you've got a minus there and we can't get rid of the minus, I just don't know that there's any point. So I'm not too sure about saving throws. But skills. Perception. I believe perception was already part of the monster, was it not? No, it was not. No, so it doesn't have perception as a skill, a trained skill. And I put this in yellow, that's right, because I think that we should have this one. So we're going to add this in. Okay, we're going to give it a skill, perception. It needs to be able to navigate and find you in some way. So let's consider that something necessary. It is a ambush pack hunter. So if it's an ambush pack hunter and it's got a grappling tentacle thing going on here, I think we really need to lean into athletics. Okay, because athletics is connected to, or strength is connected to initiating a grapple, okay, and grabbing you. So let's make sure we give them athletics. And proficiency bonuses 2, strength bonuses 2, so that's going to come out as a +4. That'll just make it a little bit easier to initiate a grapple if we're needing to do that. Okay, it's not hugely strong, but I think it seems reasonable. There's another thing here that I would like to add, and I don't often add a lot of skills to a monster, but I want to put in stealth. It's got an ability called camouflage. The GRICK has advantage on dexterity stealth checks made to hide in rocky terrain. So it's already got advantage on its dice roll for a stealth check. Great, awesome. And its bonus is a +2, which mathematically is supposed to mean that we're looking at a +7. But we probably need to make that number a little bit better. Otherwise, it's probably not going to succeed. Because +2 and advantage, it's not a great thing, even at level 2. So I'm going to give it stealth as a skill that's proficient. Stealth, which will also wind up being a +4, because we've got +2 for dex, +2 for the proficiency bonus. I think that's our skills in a nutshell. Fine, good, done. Then it's got damage resistance. Now this is actually part of the monster, suggesting that in some way there's some sort of armor on it that makes it tougher to actually hurt. I don't know how that sort of works exactly. Maybe it's just its surface is just more resilient to taking damage, right? This is why we've got the damage resistance. I haven't changed the damage resistance. I don't think it needs to be anything super crazy. It has damage resistance from bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. So if you have a magical weapon, you can get past the damage resistance. This is one of those mechanics where I always feel like that's a mistake. Now, this is probably why, by giving the damage resistance, they thought they didn't need to worry about having so many hit points on the monster. But I have found that almost essentially half the party aren't doing bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. The marshals will be, you know, if you're playing like a fighter or a monk or you're a paladin, but a wizard, sorcerer, warlock, cleric probably won't be. They're not really using those sorts of things. They're using energy. So damage resistance at this point means very, very little as far as I'm concerned. You don't generally have a magic weapon at level 2. But I would say to you that the bludgeoning, piercing, slashing damage and damage resistance is kind of meaningless. You could say, well, half the party are only going to do half the damage they would normally do. Which is fine, because usually marshals are pretty good at thumping a single target and doing a lot of damage, compared to casters who usually have to spread their damage across things. And it's usually multiple targets. So I would get rid of non-magical attacks. I just say slashing attacks. It doesn't matter whether it's magical, just keep the resistance there. Okay. Otherwise, magic weapons have too much of an effect on the game. I think having a magic weapon to get through damage immunity is a good idea. Okay, have a mechanic around that for sure, where you see it makes sense. This, I don't think is a good idea, so we're going to get rid of it. So damage resistance, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing attacks. That's it. Just leave it as that. Keep it simple. Do we need to have condition immunities? We'll come back to this. It has dark vision, 60 feet. Now the thing with dark vision is you'd assume the creature has eyes. Does this monster have eyes? It doesn't have any eyes. It has got a sensor system built into another part of its body. So it's not using its eyeballs to detect stuff. Really, what you're dealing with here is blind sight. I don't think dark vision is suitable. What I think it should have is 60 feet of blind sight. I would even go as high as going to 120 feet of blind sight. I'm happy to go with just 60 feet, but dark vision doesn't seem appropriate at all. So I'm changing that. If you don't have eyeballs, why we're using dark vision? Because that's not really what you're doing. You're using other senses, right? So blind sight. Things that don't have eyes have blind sight, 60 feet. Our perception, passive perception will change because I've given it proficiency in this, so it can actually detect creatures that it's hunting. So that's a 14. Perception's 4. Add 10 is 14. Languages, don't need any languages. I'm fine with that. We'll come back to this in a second. But we'll just keep scrolling through. Next, stone camouflage. The GRICK, let's just make that a capital since it is in fact a name, has advantage on dexterity stealth checks made to hide in rocky terrain. I'm fine with that too. Don't have a problem with this mechanic. It should be there. Remember, this is an ambush monster, and it is a pack monster. It crawls up onto things, up high, into trees, on ledges, and it attacks you quite often from above, or will drop down onto you, okay? It is an ambush monster. So, stone camouflage, great. Don't think it needs any changing whatsoever. So we'll leave that as it is. Next, pack tactics. I've put in pack tactics because it is a pack monster, but it doesn't have a pack tactic system for attacking. Like, it doesn't do that. So the GRICK has advantage on attack rolls against a creature if at least one of the GRICK's allies is within 5 feet of the creature and the ally doesn't have the incapacitated condition. In other words, you can flank, you know, as long as there's somebody else close by, whether you're flanking either side or there's two GRICKs ganging up on a single target, they will get advantage. This is a mechanic that's really suitable for a GRICK. It makes a lot of sense, so that's what I want to put there, okay? I think that will change how it works. It will make it a lot more dangerous in groups. The fewer you have, the better off the player characters will be, but the more that you have, the more dangerous the situation becomes. Okay, next, let's look at multi-attack. Multi-attack is built in such a way that unless you make an attack with a tentacle and you hit, you don't get to make a beak attack. And I think that's a mistake. So I'm going to unhighlight this and I'm going to show you why. If you have a look at the Dungeon Master Guide and this table that I've been talking about, you'll notice that it says here the amount of damage you should do per round with a challenge rating 2 monster is between 15 and 20 hit points. Now, if I hit with the tentacles, I can do on average about 9 points of damage. But that's only if I hit with the tentacles. I do not get to do the bite and the beak attack unless that hits. And because of that criteria, really our average damage is anywhere from 9 to 14 points of damage. It's way, way too low. It's under where we really need to be. Okay, I would say that this is just not going to work. What we need to do is not stipulate that the GRICK has to make a tentacle attack to be able to get the beak attack. They both have the same range. Those tentacles are not very long that come off it. The beak is about as, you know, it pops out quite a fair distance, so it's got a bit of, it can get at something. So what I would say is the easiest way to deal with this is to simply say you can make a tentacle attack and a beak attack, or 2 beak attacks. And then we've at least pushed our damage up to probably, it provided both hit, but you've got the chance now to more like a 14. Still too low, but that's at least something. So let's go here. The GRICK makes, the GRICK, let's go here. The GRICK can make one attack with its tentacles The GRICK can make 2 attacks. 2 attacks. Come on. One with its tentacles, and the other with the beak. Okay. And I don't think the same target thing is really that necessary, but if you've got 2 people close enough within 5 feet, it doesn't really matter. But what we want to do is we want to lead off and say, okay, 2 attacks, let's just get this. We also want to give that option of don't use the tentacles but use the beak. And there's a reason for doing this, and you'll see in a second why I'm saying this. But anyway, let's go here. Otherwise, the GRICK makes 2 beak attacks. I don't want to give you 2 tentacle attacks because it doesn't make any sense. Okay, it makes 2 beak attacks. And go here. This is how I want multi-attack to work for the GRICK. I think that's going to make it'll be a better situation. Next, tentacles. Melee weapon attack, +4 is still kind of low, but we'll look at the table again. Reach 5 feet, target 1 creature. That makes sense because of the way the tentacles work. And it does on average 9. The actual damage output for the tentacles I don't have a problem with at all. I'm assuming that they have like hooks on them that cause the problem. This is the slashing damage as they bite in. And I want to add in another line here. In other words, the tentacles need to give you some sort of benefit. The target is also grappled and restrained until the grapple is broken. The GRICK can make beak attacks while its tentacles hold a creature. Now, there's a reason for doing this. My primary reason for doing this is that the idea of this creature, I think, not only being a pack and ambush monster, is that the tentacles grab onto a target and then start to use the beak to bite. I think that's the whole concept of how this thing operates. But we have a slight problem. One, the damage output from making a tentacle attack and a beak attack is quite low still. And if we take 2 beak attacks, it's still very low. So we need to adjust our damage output a little bit. And the easiest way, I think, is to simply increase the beak damage dice. Instead of it making it just 1, we'll make it 2, which means we get exactly the same calculation. So whether you make the tentacle or beak, it doesn't really matter, okay? But you want to do the tentacle because you want to be able to grapple and restrain your target. That's part of the creature, right? So if you get the opportunity, you do that. But once you've grappled on, it would mean you'll be able to make, once you've grabbed onto a target, the next turn you can beak them twice. You can use your beak twice on them, which means potentially you're doing 18 points of damage, which is much more in line with where we needed to be in the first place. Okay, so this is why I'm putting this in here that way. It evens out the problem in terms of doing damage per round, and it also means we can continue to do damage to a target until it's ready to eat. In other words, it's down to 0 hit points. It's time to drag it off and have a munchy time. Will a character be able to deal with this? I would probably imagine that most characters, that are melee at level 2 will survive 9 points of hit. 9 hit points on average, with a tentacle. If you're dealing with a caster, a second attack will probably take them down below 0 hit points, but won't kill them instantly. Okay, so they've still got time, they've still got saving throws, there's still, there's something that can happen. Marshals at level 2 probably will not go down with the first blow, and in most cases, particularly the barbarian fighters, the ones that have the D12 and D10 as their hit dice, they're probably not going to go down by one attack in a round. But they might be close to it. A second round will probably take them down. Okay? And then another follow-up will, of course, probably count as a critical. So there's a bit of risk to facing these creatures now. These are a lot scarier than they were before. And I think that's probably the best way I would see to doing this. But we're not finished. We need to look at our attack modifier. If we have a look at the Dungeon Master Guide, you'll notice in here, it says here for Challenge Rating 2, that you should have a +3 for your attack bonus. A +3 is far lower than what the characters will have at level 2. Far, far lower. At least this monster has a +4. So when the designers did the design for this creature, at least it gave it a little bit better of a chance to actually hit a target. But it's not very good. Most characters at level 2, even at level 1, will have a +5. If you're a marshal, you've probably got a +2. If you're taking a, you specialize in ranged attacks, around level 1 or 2, you're going to have a +7 to hit. So that's just dealing with D&D 2014, right? So you'll probably, most characters have a +5. Proficiency bonuses 2, their +3 for their modifier from their main attack or main ability that they're using, so +5 is pretty standard. You might have a +6 if you're a marshal and you specialize in that and you pick up the right tools to do that. Or you might be able to get advantage in some way, or weapon mastery. Now, the new rules have come out, and this is almost guaranteed that almost all marshals will have a +1, and some spellcasters will have a +1 when they cast a spell. So you're not looking at a +5 to +7, you're looking at a +6 to +7. So we've really put ourselves in a weird place. I would say to you that the table in the Dungeon Master Guide is wrong, that it would be much smarter to line this up with the 2014 and part of the 2024 rules for the game of D&D and go with a +5. I'll just set it there. Why is it a +5? Because you're looking at this and you're thinking, but Fred, you can't do this because its strength is only a +2 and its proficiency bonus is a +2. And if we push this to a 5, that will mess it all up. Don't worry about it. So we make this a +5. And I will show you how to fix it. +5. Okay, that means we change our damage output a little bit. It's not a huge amount, so we're going to have to add in a +3 here. And it means we have to go and change, where is it? This one here. We're going to have to make this a +3. We'll make this a 16. So we're changing the damage output. Okay, which means that this here, that'll be athletics will be +5. Blah 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 blah. We've got all that, and we was like, average damage is going to change, so we'll need to recalculate our average damage, which we will do right now. So 2 6s, the average is 3.5. Multiply that by 2, we get 7, and then we +3, 10. And then the same thing applies here. It's going to be 10 as well. That means, on average, we're doing about 20 points of damage per round with our monster. And if you have a look at the GRICK guide, it is between 15 and 20. We're at the top end of the scale for sure. But I think we probably need to lean more into the top end of the scale. For those of you who are unaware, there are so many different ways. Even with 2014's rules, you're probably not going to kill a character in the first round with a GRICK. If it hits with all of its attacks, and they're level 2, okay? The second round, different story. Things are going to get problematic. You're going to have to start dealing with the creature. You're going to have to break them free. They're going to have to break free if they can, if they're still up. If they don't break free, you're going to have to start pummeling it. But even if you use maximum hit points for this creature, it is probably dead in 2 rounds anyway. So the second round, even if they are on the verge of getting into some real trouble, it's probably dead after that. If you have 2, it might take you 4 rounds to get through them. Bear in mind that when you roll a 20-sided dice with a +5, what is the chance of hitting the armor class of the characters? It's about 50%. Okay, to 25%. So most characters have about an armor class of 14 or 15. So roughly about 50% of the time for those guys. Those are really the spellcasters at the back, which are probably not going to be hit by this creature unless your ambush comes off perfectly. If they're dealing with the marshals, chances are they're looking at more like a 25% chance to hit the marshal classes, because they're looking at more like 18, 17, or a 20, maybe even more. In terms of the armor class. So, yeah, we should be fine. I don't think there will be certainly search situations where it might be a bit problematic, But ultimately, I think that's all going to be good. So let's have a look at the condition immunities, and then I'm going to go to chat and see what you guys have said there. I know I've been talking a lot and just doing stuff. It's because this monster, actually, I was really not keen on covering this monster and doing a rebuild, because I was not completely convinced that I had a good grasp of what to do. It's one of the reasons why I haven't done the purple worm, because I still don't feel like the purple worm is very easy to design for. I certainly know how to improve it. I've always found the GRICK, though, to be a giant pain in the butt to figure out how to make it work. And I think I got it figured out today, but we'll see. Don't want them to be immune to the condition unconscious. That would be ridiculous. I do want them to be stunned. If you can stun this creature, that's a good thing. Remember, they're not a solo monster. There's probably going to be 2 or 3 of these things, depending on what level the characters are. Restrained, yes, I want them to be able to restrain the creature. Absolutely. Let's leave that as option. Prone, knocking it prone. It's a bit weird to knock a creature like this prone, because if you have a look at how the creature's built, it's like a snake. How do you knock it prone? It doesn't make any sense. This is one condition I would add. I don't think you can knock this creature prone. So we're adding an, oops, no, that's not prone, is it? Prone. I'm adding prone. Can you poison it? Well, this is not a poisonous creature. I was looking to see if the GRICK had anything that suggested that it inflicted some sort of poison. And that's not, doesn't seem to be the concept of this monster. It's an ambush monster. It's a pack tactic, a pack hunting monster. And it uses its tentacles to grab you and then bite you and then eat you. That's really essentially what it is. It's okay. Petrified. Yes, absolutely. All creatures should be able to be petrified unless it's a living stone statue. Okay. Paralyzed. Yes, I want you to be able to paralyze this thing. If you can shut it down, that's a good thing. Invisible, should never have that one. Incapacitated, should never have that one. Can you grapple it? Yes, you can absolutely grapple it. It might be a bit difficult because we have given it, a +5 to our athletics, and it's probably going to grapple you before you grapple it because of its tentacles. But ultimately, yeah, absolutely. Okay, frightened. Yes, I think you should be able to frighten this thing. It's not the brightest creature, but its wisdom is pretty high. So, wisdom is more a better indication of whether something understands its mortality. It's not a powerful creature, but it's, deafened, absolutely. Charmed, yes, we want to charm this thing. Let's leave that open. Blind. You can't blind a creature that don't have no eyes. So we're going to get rid of blind. How do you actually blind a creature if it's got blind sight, because we give it blind sight now, and it's got no eyeballs? It doesn't make any sense. So I've included those as well. And the saving throws, I'm leaving that open to see what people have to say in terms of what I've done so far. But that's what I think is the solution to the GRICK. So let's go over to the chat and see what people have to say. I'm going to be curious. I expect somebody to mention something about poison, more than likely. I'm just going to have some tea. Yeah. Oh, so hello, Derp. Yeah. So Derp has Derp has been commenting and kidding me about the fact that I haven't been turning so many monsters into playable races, which is why he's got the comment about the fixing the GRICK and not making it a playable race. Hello, Big Kid. Big Kid is a moderator. Hey, all the best with your time. I know you're having some trouble. I'm not going to go into the details because I'm sure you don't want everybody to know, but I really hope that you had some good news, mate. Okay. Fred Huber, a slick burrow including through rock. A slick burrowing. Oh, you want it to be able to burrow. A slick burrowing, tremescent, so it knows where to pop out. I see. You want to make this a burrowing creature as well, rather than a climbing creature. I can see that kind of makes sense. Oh, how to fix the stat block from negative space. Put the creature down and start over. It's greasy. Okay, so instead of making it greasy, it's kind of like a snake. It's kind of like a worm. Yeah, I think burrowing is something it could probably do pretty effectively. Let's give it a burrow speed. I don't think it should be 30 feet. And that opens up the ambush aspect a lot more. Is it fit with the lore? No, but the physiology of the creature, that makes a lot of sense. So let's do that. Let's put in a burrow speed. I don't think we need to burrow through rock though. I don't feel like it's a creature that will go through rock, but I think definitely add in a burrow speed. Yeah, let's do that. Let's just add that in. Climb, burrow. The burrow, 20 feet. 20 feet. And it goes dot, comma, doesn't it? Dot, comma, space. Oops. Oh, oh, look at that. Okay. So now we have a burrow speed. Doesn't go as fast as if it was climbing, and doesn't go as fast if it's on land. Just slow it down a little bit. Okay. Yep. I'm fine with that. That seems like a sensible thing to do, Fred. Thank you for that. So, Fred's ideas, get advantage versus getting grappled. Well, it's got the athletics benefit now, so that's going to give it a better chance of dealing with being grappled. And I think it probably should be, better than most things at trying to grapple because of the way it's built. So we kind of covered that, I think. Make some GRICK with special attacks that could spit out slime. I'm gonna leave that for you guys to sort out. As a game master, you modify and change your monsters. I'm just trying to deal with the basic creature. If tentacle hits, they get an automatic beak attack. I can see where you're going with this. But I think the problem... hello, Pale Rider, by the way. I think the problem with having a single attack hit to guarantee getting another attack essentially means that you're dependent on the first dice roll. If the first dice roll with the tentacle doesn't work, you can still follow through with a beak attack now, and that improves your chances of actually hitting the target and doing damage to the player characters. This is why I'm not a fan of that idea. This is why I've broken it up to tentacle and beak or beak and beak, so that you've got a better chance. If the first one doesn't hit, at least the second one might hit as well. You actually kind of make it harder for the monster to operate by doing things where, can you imagine if you had to make one dice roll to determine if three things, its tentacles, its beak, and its tongue did damage? That kind of makes it a bit of a problem. Yes, the GRICK does have resistance to non-magical attacks. I've just eliminated that. I've just said it's just got resistance to those sorts of attacks and just left it at that. That feature, putting in non-magical attacks and making magic weapons even better than they are before. Remember, magic weapons do +1, +2, or +3 to attack and damage. So they've already got an advantage, and you're dealing with bound accuracy. Bound accuracy, the numbers are supposed to not move around too much, and that throws it out completely, which is why I eliminated that from the damage resistance. Beak attacks are at advantage while attacking a creature it has grappled with its tentacles. Yes, if you are grappling somebody and restrained, you will have advantage. That's why the beak attack, this is why you use the tentacle first. If you connect with the tentacle, you follow up with the beak. If you miss with the tentacle, you won't have advantage. But that's the basic concept of how I would go about doing it. Vulnerable to assault, like a slug. Nah, we'll leave that alone. The greasy slime makes it hard for them to hold on to weapons, drop it in the natural one. Well, they don't use weapons anyway, so I don't know that would make any sense. We're being evil, so we're doing it right. I'm not trying to be evil. I'm just trying to make it so that the GRICK. All the time I've ever run the GRICK in 5e, the way that it's written in the book, it has never been satisfying for me or for the players. They've always thought, that's the most boring fight I've ever had. That was so shite. And it's happened to me many, many, many times. I've made changes to the GRICK, and every time I've made a slight change to the GRICK, it still has not been particularly effective. I think you have to make wide changes to the GRICK for it to work. And the GRICK is one of those monsters where you game masters tend to use them at level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. They kind of get used for quite a long time, and the current GRICK cannot stand up to that sort of punishment. We live to say things that are unexpected. I'm sure you do. I'm sure you do. Okay, so this is where my head is at with regard to the GRICK. I'm going to just quickly go through the last little bit. Nobody mentioned anything about saving throws. I don't think that it needs to have a saving throw for anything. I mean, it would not hurt in some respects, but I only want the monster to hang around about 2 rounds. And, you know, and after that, we're dealing with other things. So saving throw can probably go. So we'll ditch this, and we'll keep that. And bearing in mind that the new 2024 Player's Handbook, the players get access to temporary hit points. Almost every single class has a temporary hit point thing. Now, they don't usually get it at level 2. They get it later on. But there are so many ways to get temporary hit points, even at low level. So it's kind of crazy. And we're talking about spells, right? Temporary hit points to heal. Healing spells, remember, healing spells do a lot more. They're like double what they did before for 2024. If we're dealing with 2014, it's a very different kettle of fish. But even with 2014, I think we'll be all right. I think this will be fine. So let's review and just show you what changes I've made, where the changes were, and then yeah. Okay. So remastering the GRICK for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. This monster needed to be fixed. It's been a terrible monster for a long, long time. And so I haven't changed as much as you might think. But it really never worked very well. So its armor class I'm fine with. It's still 14. Its hit points were about half the amount it should be. I doubled that. Instead of like 68, it's 12d8. So you get a range of 96 to 54. That's the average 54. I would suggest, depending on your group and what level they are, I'd go more towards 96, but you could go down as low as 54 if you wanted to. Its speed has not changed for climbing and its walking speed, but we've given it a burrow speed of 20 feet because it kind of looks like it burrows. The only ability score I've changed is strength. Instead of a 14, it's now a 16. I give it a +3, okay? It had no skills, essentially, so now it's got athletics at +5, so it's proficient in that. Perception is a +4. Stealth is a +4 because it is a stealth monster, needs perception, and it's a grappling monster as well. Its damage resistance was bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage to non-magical attacks. I've eliminated that because requiring a magical, allowing a magic weapon to get past damage resistance is a bad mechanic. It's too much. It's like doubling the damage. So I've eliminated that. Okay, and bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage is only 3 different types of damage type that the party can do. It had no condition immunities. I've given it blind and prone. Why blind? Because it got no eyes. And I've given it blind sight as well instead of dark vision. Prone because how do you knock a snake or a worm prone? You can't. Doesn't make any sense. Its senses was dark vision to 60 feet. I've given it blind sight because it does not have no eyes. No eyes does make sense. Its passive perception was 12. It is now 14 because we gave it perception as a trained skill. Languages didn't change. Challenge rating, proficiency bonus, all the same. Stone camouflage, I was happy with that. Didn't change it at all. I did add in pack tactics. Why? Because this is a pack hunting monster. It's not just a stealth monster. It doesn't just use stealth to sneak up on you and attack you from above usually, because it can climb, or from below in this case. The creature has advantage on attack rolls against a creature if at least one of the GRICK allies is within 5 feet of that creature and the ally doesn't have the incapacitate condition. So it's basically pack tactics, okay? And that's the idea being is you don't usually have this fighting on its own. If you have just one, it should do all rightish, depending on the character's level or the party level, but it should be used in a group, okay? Multi-attack was too dependent on the tentacle attack hitting to get the beak attack. So I've eliminated that problem. The GRICK now makes 2 attacks, one with its tentacles and one with the beak. Okay. Otherwise, if you're not wanting to use the tentacle because you've already grappled the creature, then the GRICK can use 2 beak attacks. So you've got a bit of variety and flexibility with your monster. We've changed tentacles. The attack bonus was a +4. That's way too low. It needs to be a +5 if you're dealing with level 2 characters, even level 1 characters, really. Okay, that really means that about 50 to 25% of the time you'll hit, and probably not much more than that. Your damage output was way too low, and so I have boosted that up. It was a 9. I've made it a 10 because I boosted up the strength modifier. And when you attack and you connect with the tentacles, you grapple the target and the restrained until they break the grapple. And that GRICK can still attack you when it's grappling you with a beak. Okay, it won't be using its tentacles anymore because it can only hold 1 creature. The beak, okay, instead of a +4, it's now a +5. And the reach is the same, it's just 1 target. And instead of doing the rather pathetic 5 points of damage, I think it was, or something like that, it is now more like 10, okay, piercing damage. And that, I think, will essentially get you what you need from the GRICK. Ambush monster, pack monster, grapple, and beak you, or bite you, essentially. And that's it. And I'll put this up onto Patreon. Okay, let's go back to chat. Let's see what everybody has to say. Otherwise, I'm done for today, which is very fast. Oh, Tremor Sense. Oh, you wanted me to include Tremor Sense. I forgot about that. Vulnerable to Salt. Yeah, I had forgotten about that. I'll add in Tremor Sense now. Should be how its blind sight works. I think we can add in Tremor Sense and blind sight. I don't think I agree with that necessarily, Fred, because the creature still operates above ground. I don't think this is a below ground monster. The idea is it climbs up onto things as well. So do we need to have Tremor Sense if we have blind sight? I don't think we do. Because this is the lore behind the monster doesn't really suggest that it digs into the ground. The lore behind it suggests that it climbs into trees or up into rock ledges and comes from above. I think I'll leave Tremor Sense alone. I think blind sight will do everything that the Tremor Sense would need to do, and a bit more, honestly, because we can use other senses other than eyeballs. Because I don't think the GRICK operates with having little. I mean, it probably does have little hairs coming off its body that can, it can feel the environment like a worm. A worm has like little hairs coming off it. You just can't see them, right? And that helps it feel the earth around it and vibration and movement. And it probably has something like that. But I also think this is a creature that operates by smell and by hearing. Probably in the sides it has a couple of ear canals with little holes, kind of like a snake, that sort of hearing. And then it's probably operating with either its tongue or a couple of nostrils in the beak that allow it to pick up odors that are floating around, so it can pinpoint the location of its prey. So that's where my head is at. There's a couple of ways you could probably do it. I think that's going to work the best way anyway. So let's end this poll and have a look and see what people have to say. Here we go. So do you think the GRICK for Dungeons & Dragons 5e needs fixing? Yes, 45%. So just under half of you. Undecided, 38%. So a lot of you were really not too sure about it. Just watching, 18%. And no was 0 out of 11 votes. Yeah. Honestly, the GRICK really needed to be fixed. It never was a very good monster. I just think it's going to work a lot better than it was before, in my opinion. In any case, we're done. That was fast. I will be back tomorrow. I'm talking about the Ranger for Dungeons & Dragons 2024 or D&D 6e. For those of you who get it, great. If you don't, you don't. But yeah, we're going to be back next week, do another monster. I haven't decided which monster it will be. I'm going to say right now, I don't want to do the purple worm just yet. I am working my way through I'm trying to work my way through most of the major monsters that have problems that are in the Creative Commons for Dungeons and Dragons 5e, rather than anything that would cause problems with Wizards of the Coast. That might be listed as their IP, or they think is their IP at this present time. So I'm trying to do that, but I'm also aware that a lot of you are looking at the high-end monsters. I noticed that the high-end monsters seem to get more people interest, which I totally get, rather than the lower standard monsters. But yeah, I wanted to address this one because it's been an issue for a while. And yeah, anyway, so I don't know which one it'll be. It could be a lot of different things. Maybe you guys will leave some comments and let me know where are we going next. I have kind of like a schedule of monsters, and I've been moving the schedule around a lot to decide which one I'll do next. So I'm not following the original schedule I had before. It's sort of being based off where my head is at and what people are interested in, or what my patrons are wanting to operate with or use in the future. So yeah, feedback is always an interesting way to see maybe it'll happen. You never know. Anyway, huge thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. Big, huge thank you to everybody who took part in the poll today. I really want to thank those of you who are patrons and support me on Patreon. Without your support, I just would not be able to keep doing this. It would just become too expensive to operate a YouTube channel, frankly. So huge thank you to all of you who do support me on Patreon. And I will be putting this up onto the Patreon at the end of the week when I get a chance to do so. Fortunately, I only have 2 more days of work. Yeehaw. So those of you in chat who have been giving me feedback and commenting, thank you. Fred Hubert in particular, Negative Space, Derp, also a patron, and Pale Rider and Big Kid. Hey, all the best, buddy. Hopefully everything goes well for you. So that's my suggestion. Those are my thanks. So wherever you are in the world, whether it be the morning, the afternoon, or the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Oh, and I probably will be over on Discord if you want to come and hang out.